I still remember the exact feeling of the cold concrete. It wasn't just the pain, though the pain was tremendous. It was the silence, that horrible, hollow silence from upstairs, no footsteps rushing down, no door flying open, no voice calling out, "Dad, Dad, are you okay?" Nothing, just the distant sound of the television. A laugh track from some comedy show playing above my head, while I lay crumpled at the bottom of my own basement stairs, my right shoulder burning like fire, a warm wetness spreading beneath my cheek where my head had struck the edge of the bottom step. I tried to move. I couldn't. I tried to call out. My voice came out small and broken, the voice of an old man who had spent his whole life being strong, now reduced to a whisper in the dark. And somewhere above me I heard her voice, my daughter-in-law Renata. "Marcus, what was that noise?" A pause. Then my son's voice, the voice of the boy I had held in my arms the night he was born, the boy I had taught to ride a bicycle, the boy I had put through college. That voice said 7 words that I will carry with me to my grave. "It's just Dad. Leave him. He'll be fine." And then I heard Renata laugh. Not a nervous laugh, not a worried laugh, a dismissive, cruel laugh. "Ha, maybe now he'll get the message," she said. "Let him stay down there." And then silence again. The television got louder. Someone turned up the volume. I closed my eyes, and in that dark basement, bleeding and alone, I thought about my whole life, every sacrifice I had ever made, every dollar I had ever spent, every dream I had ever quietly buried so that my children could have theirs. And I made a decision. I reached into my shirt pocket with my one good arm. I had 1 bar of signal. 1 bar, and I made the most important phone call of my life. But we'll get to that. First, let me tell you how I ended up here. My name is Harold James Whitfield. I was born in a small town in rural Georgia, the third of 6 children. My father was a farmer. My mother cleaned houses. We were not rich people, but we were proud people, people who believed that how you treat others is the only true measure of your worth. I grew up with nothing, and I was determined that my children would grow up with something. I worked for 34 years as an electrician. Not a glamorous job, not a job that ever made anyone look at me with admiration at a dinner party, but it was honest work. Dangerous work sometimes. I've been shocked so many times my left hand trembles slightly even now. A permanent reminder of years spent inside walls that could kill you if you weren't careful. I married my wife, Dorothy, when we were both 23 years old. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, not just in her face, but in her spirit. Dorothy was the kind of woman who remembered every birthday, who stayed up late sewing costumes for school plays, who cried at graduations like each diploma was a piece of her own heart being handed back to her. We had 2 children together, Marcus our son. He was born first, and from the very beginning he was the golden one. Bright, charming, always knew exactly what to say. He got his mother's looks and somehow got a confidence that neither of us ever had. I was proud of him in a way that's hard to describe. Not just fatherly pride, something deeper, something almost religious about how much I believed in that boy. And then there was Lily, our daughter, born 4 years after Marcus, quieter than her brother, but deeper. Lily was the one who sat with me on the porch in the evenings without needing to say anything. She would just sit there, shoulder to shoulder with her old father, watching the fireflies come out, and that silence between us was the most comfortable silence I've ever known. For many years our family was happy, and then Dorothy got sick. 6 years ago, my wife, my Dorothy, was diagnosed with early-onset dementia. She was 66 years old. I want you to understand what that means. It doesn't just mean someone forgets things. It means you watch the person you love most in the world slowly become a stranger. It means some mornings she looked at me with recognition and love, and other mornings she looked at me like I was someone she'd never seen before standing in her kitchen. I quit working to take care of her full-time. We had savings. We had the house, a 4-bedroom home that I had paid off with 30 years of hard work. We were not wealthy, but we were comfortable. Marcus had married Renata by then. She was a corporate lawyer, sharp, polished, the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately started calculating what everything in it was worth. I tried to love her. I did. For Marcus's sake, I tried. But there was always something behind her eyes when she looked at me, a kind of impatience. Like I was a problem to be managed rather than a person to be known. When Dorothy's condition worsened, Marcus and Renata sat me down one Sunday afternoon. "Dad," Marcus said, loosening his collar the way he always did when he was uncomfortable, "we've been talking, and we think it might be time to look at options for Mom." "Options," I repeated. "Facilities," Renata said, smooth and efficient, like she was presenting a case. "There are excellent memory care centers, staff trained specifically for this. She would have round-the-clock care." I looked at them both for a long moment. "I am her round-the-clock care," I said quietly. "Dad, you're 70 years old, 69 at the time," I said. And I made a vow, in sickness and in health. I meant it. Renata and Marcus exchanged a look. That look. The one that passed between them like a secret I wasn't supposed to see. The look that said he's being difficult again. I said nothing more. I went home and held my wife's hand while she slept, and I kept that vow until the very end. Dorothy passed away 8 months later, on a Tuesday morning in April, just as the sun was coming up. I was holding her hand. She looked at me, really looked at me, and she said my name, clear and certain, the way she used to say it when we were young. "Harold." That was all, but it was everything. After Dorothy died, I fell apart quietly, the way old men do. I didn't cry publicly or make a scene. I just diminished. The house felt enormous. My appetite disappeared. I found myself sitting at the kitchen table for hours with a cup of coffee that had gone completely cold, not noticing, not caring. Lily called every single day. She lived 3 states away, Tennessee, with her husband and 2 young children. She wanted me to come live near her. She practically begged me, "Daddy, please, come here. The kids need their grandfather. I need my father." But Marcus got to me first. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone in that big house," he said one evening in June. "Renata and I talked about it. We have the guest room. You should come stay with us for a while, get back on your feet." I hesitated. Something in me hesitated, but I was lonely and broken, and Marcus was my son, and when your son opens his door to you, you walk through it. I sold the house. That was my first mistake. I see that now. I sold the house that I had spent 30 years paying for, the house where my children grew up, the house where Dorothy died with the morning sun on her face. I sold it, and I gave half the money to Marcus to help with a down payment on a larger home, and I kept the other half in savings. At the time, Marcus cried when I handed him that check. He held me, and he cried, and he said, "Dad, thank you. You have no idea what this means. I thought I was being a good father." I moved into the guest room of their new house on a warm August afternoon. Marcus and Renata's home was beautiful, large and modern, everything clean and sharp and expensive. My old furniture didn't fit. Renata suggested, very gently and very firmly, that perhaps my things might look better in storage. I packed most of what I owned into a storage unit and moved into my son's home with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. And that was how it began. The first few weeks were fine, civil. Marcus was often working late, but he'd come home and sit with me at dinner, ask about my day, tell me things about his job. It felt almost like family. Renata was polite, professionally polite, the way she would be with a client she didn't particularly like but needed to tolerate. But slowly, so slowly that I almost didn't notice it happening, things began to change. It started with small things. Renata stopped setting a place for me at the dinner table without explanation. I'd come down for dinner and find 2 places set, not 3. I started eating earlier alone before they came home. Then she rearranged the kitchen, moved everything. When I asked where the coffee had been moved to, she sighed in a way that made me feel like I'd asked something unreasonable. I reorganized, Harold. Everything has a new place now. Try to remember. The way she said Harold, like the name itself was an inconvenience. Marcus noticed none of it. Or perhaps he noticed and said nothing. I'm still not entirely sure which is worse. Then she started making comments, quiet, cutting, perfectly designed to humiliate without being technically offensive. When I watched television in the living room, Harold, do you mind? We're trying to wind down. When I cooked myself breakfast on weekend mornings, the smell of that is really strong first thing in the morning. When my daughter Lily called and we laughed loudly about something, some of us are working from home, Harold. I said nothing. I was raised to respect my son's house. I was raised to keep peace. I moved my life smaller and smaller, like a man trying to take up no space at all. I started spending most of my time in the basement, which had been converted into a kind of den. There was an old couch down there, a small television Marcus almost never used. I made it my little world, my sanctuary, the one place in the house where I wasn't in anyone's way. And I told myself this was temporary, that things would get better, that my son would see what was happening and speak up for his father. I kept waiting. I kept being wrong. Part 6. The night everything finally broke. It had been 14 months since I moved in. It was a Wednesday in October. I remember because the leaves on the oak tree outside the basement window were turning that particular deep red that Dorothy had always loved. Marcus came home late that evening. I could hear them upstairs, the 2 of them talking, low and urgent. The kind of conversation that stops when someone walks into the room. I came up for a glass of water around 8 o'clock. I walked into the kitchen, and Renata was sitting at the table with a glass of wine. And her expression, when she saw me, was so openly hostile that I actually stopped walking. We need to talk, she said. Marcus, come in here. Marcus came in from the hallway. He wouldn't meet my eyes. This isn't working, Renata said, flat and certain. Renata, Marcus started. No, we've been putting this off for months, Harold. She turned to me. You need to find somewhere else to live, a seniors community, an apartment, something. This arrangement has run its course. I stood very still. I looked at my son, Marcus. I said quietly, is this what you want? He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes was something I hadn't expected, not cruelty, but cowardice. He was afraid of his wife. He had chosen her. He kept choosing her, and he didn't know how to stop. Dad, it's not working. Renata's right, maybe. Where am I supposed to go? We can help you find. I gave you $240,000, I said, very quietly, from the sale of your mother's house, the house where you grew up. I gave it to you. Renata's jaw tightened. That was a gift? You said it yourself. It was a gift from a father to his son. I said, not a transaction, Harold. I'm going back downstairs, I said, because I had nothing more to say, because continuing to speak felt like bleeding in front of people who were enjoying the sight of it. I turned toward the basement door, and what happened next happened so fast that I have replayed it 1,000 times, and I still struggle to make it feel real. Marcus stepped forward, frustrated, agitated, reaching for my arm to stop me, and he pushed me. He didn't mean to push me as hard as he did. I want to be honest about that. I think he meant to grab me, to stop me, to say something. But his hand hit my shoulder with force, and I was right at the top of the stairs, and my foot missed the first step, and then I was falling. 14 steps. I counted them once, idly, when I first moved in. 14 steps is a very long way to fall when you are 70. 1 year old. I hit the bottom and I lay there, and I heard Marcus say, breathing hard, "Dad," and then Renata's voice, cold as stone, "Marcus, leave it. He's dramatic. He'll be fine." "But Renata, he's fine. Come back in here." A long pause, and then footsteps, walking away. The basement door clicked shut, and I was alone in the dark. I assessed myself slowly, the way you do when you're hurt and you're trying not to panic. My right shoulder, the pain there was electric and violent. Dislocated, I thought, or broken. My head was bleeding where it had hit the concrete. I could feel the warmth of it spreading beneath my cheek. My left hip ached deeply. I thought I might have cracked something there too, but my left hand, my good hand, was free. And my phone was in my shirt pocket. It took me almost 4 minutes to get it out. I know because I watched the small screen light up and show me the time. 4 minutes of breathing and inching my fingers toward my pocket. Every movement sending a wave of pain through my shoulder that made my vision white out. I got the phone, 1 bar of signal, 1 bar. I did not call 911, not first. I called Lily. She answered on the second ring. It was after 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and she answered on the second ring because that is who my daughter is. "Daddy, is everything okay?" I hadn't planned what to say, but the words came out very calm. I was surprised by how calm I was. "Lily, baby, I need you to listen to me carefully. I've fallen down the basement stairs. I'm hurt, my shoulder and my head. I'm lying at the bottom of the stairs." Silence. "Then, Daddy, Marcus and Renata are upstairs. They know I fell. They're not coming down." Another silence. "Longer this time. I need you to call 911 for me," I said, "because I'm not sure I can stay awake much longer. And I need you to hear me right now, because I might not be able to talk again for a while." "Daddy, oh God." "Yes, I'm calling. I'm calling right now. Don't move, Daddy. Stay on the line." "Lily." "What, Daddy, what?" "I love you. You have been a good daughter. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. Daddy, stop talking like that. You're going to be fine, David." I heard her call for her husband. "David, call 911. Daddy's hurt." I let the phone rest against the concrete beside my face, and I listened to her voice like a lifeline. I did not lose consciousness. I want to be honest about that too. I stayed awake, mostly, drifting only at the edges. But I lay on that cold floor for 22 minutes before the ambulance arrived. 22 minutes. I heard them come. I heard the knock on the front door above me. I heard voices, Renata's voice, suddenly high and concerned, performing worry the way she might perform anything she needed to perform. I heard the basement door open and the heavy boots of the paramedics on the stairs. Sir, can you hear me?" "Yes," I said. "I can hear you fine." They were good, professional, gentle. They put a brace around my neck and got me onto a board and carried me up those 14 stairs. And when I came out into the hallway, I saw Marcus standing against the wall, his face the color of ash. He couldn't look at me. I looked at him. I didn't say a word. I was taken to St. Augustine's Medical Center. They did a full assessment. My injuries: a fractured clavicle, a significant concussion, 3 cracked ribs on my left side, and a laceration on my scalp that required 11 stitches. The doctor, a young woman named Dr. Chen, came to speak with me after the scans. "Mr. Whitfield, we have your results. The fall caused these injuries." She paused. "But there are also some findings we need to discuss that are unrelated to the fall." I waited. "We found a mass," she said carefully. "In your abdomen. It's Mr. Whitfield. It's a tumor. And based on its size and the characteristics on the scan, it's been there for some time. Have you had any abdominal pain, fatigue, unexplained weight loss?" I sat with that for a moment. Had I been more tired lately? Yes. Had I been eating less? Yes, but I had attributed that to living in a house where I didn't feel welcome at the dinner table. We need to do a biopsy, Dr. Chen said, but I want to be honest with you. This needs immediate attention. Here is the shocking thing. The thing that I turned over in my mind all night while I lay in that hospital bed, listening to the machines beep softly around me. I had gone to my own doctor, my regular physician of 15 years, 3 months earlier. I had mentioned the fatigue, the weight loss. He had ordered blood tests and told me everything looked fine and sent me home. But unbeknownst to me, and this came out later, in conversations with the medical team, there had been a note in my file recommending a follow-up scan. A note that had somehow been overlooked. A note that, had anyone followed up on, might have caught this tumor 3 months earlier. The biopsy came back 2 days later. Cancer, stage 2, but moving. Treatable likely, but requiring immediate and aggressive intervention. My son had pushed me down a flight of stairs. His wife had told him to leave me there, and lying at the bottom of those stairs was how I found out I was fighting for my life in more ways than one. Lily arrived at the hospital the morning after my fall. She came through that door and she walked straight to my bed and she put her arms around me so carefully, so gently because of the ribs, because of the shoulder, and she cried into my neck like she was a little girl again and I was the strong one. Daddy, 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 she just kept saying it. Like the word itself was holding her together. I held her with my good arm. I'm all right, baby girl. I said, I'm here. Marcus came to the hospital the morning of the second day. He came alone without Renata, which told me something. He sat in the chair beside my bed, and he looked at his hands for a long time before he spoke. Dad, I know, I said. I didn't mean to push you that hard. I wasn't thinking, Marcus. He stopped. I know you didn't mean for me to fall, I said. But you let me stay down there. That part was a choice. His face crumpled. Marcus, my beautiful, confident son, who had charmed his way through every room he'd ever entered, looked suddenly like a broken old thing. I know, he whispered, I know. Your wife said to let me die down there. She didn't mean. Those were her words. The silence stretched out long and terrible between us. I found out I have cancer, Marcus, I said quietly. Found out while I was here because I fell because of that night. He made a sound. Not a word. Just a sound low and raw and coming from somewhere deep in his chest. There's something else, I said. And you need to hear it, not because I want to hurt you, but because it's true and you deserve the truth. I told him what my attorney had been preparing, because in those long months of being made small in my son's house, of being pushed toward the edges of my own existence, I had been quietly planning. I had spoken to an attorney. I had begun the process of restructuring my remaining savings, the 200,000 or so I still had, and had been in the process of establishing a trust. For Lily, for her children. The money that Marcus had assumed would eventually come to him, that inheritance that I think Renata had factored into her calculations about what I was worth as a house guest, had already been redirected. 3 weeks before my fall, I had signed the paperwork. Marcus didn't say anything about the money. I want to be clear about that. He didn't argue or demand or show anything mercenary. He just sat there in that chair and he cried. Silently, with his face in his hands, he cried like I hadn't seen him cry since he was 12 years old and his dog died. And part of me wanted to reach over and comfort him, because I am his father, and that instinct never fully dies. But I had something to say first. I kept quiet for a long time. I told him, because I was raised to keep the peace, because I thought if I made myself small enough, things would be okay, because I thought you would eventually see what was happening in your own house, and you would choose me, not over your wife, just alongside her, as your father, as someone worth a seat at the table, Dad. You didn't, and that's something you're going to have to live with, not as punishment, just as truth. He nodded. He couldn't speak. I love you, I said. That doesn't stop. I don't know how to make it stop. But love doesn't mean I have to pretend that what happened was acceptable. It happened, Marcus, it happened, and you made a choice, and now we both have to figure out how to live in the aftermath of it. He left an hour later. He stopped at the door and turned back and looked at me and tried to say something. But there were no words available for what he was feeling. I could see that clearly. He nodded once, the smallest, most broken nod, and he left. Renata came 2 days later, without Marcus, which surprised me. She sat in the same chair Marcus had sat in, and she was wearing that composure of hers like armor. But something was different. Something underneath the armor had shifted. I know you're not going to believe me, she began. But I'm sorry. I studied her. She stopped, restarted. I've been angry for a long time, Harold. Not at you specifically. At, I don't know, my own life, my own expectations, nothing that has anything to do with you. You still said what you said. I told her, yes, let him die down there. Those were your words, Renata. She flinched. Yes, did you mean them? A long silence. Not as literally as they sound, she said finally, but enough. I was cold enough to say them, and that's, her voice cracked, just slightly, before she controlled it again. That's not who I want to be. I don't know when I became someone who could say that about another person. I said nothing. I let that sit. I heard about the tumor, she said. Marcus told me, and I know. I want you to know that that Marcus wants to help with Renata, I said gently. I appreciate that you came. I do. But I'm not interested in what happens next with money or arrangements or logistics. I'm interested in whether you understand what you did, not to my finances. Me, as a human being. She looked at me, and for the first time in the 3 years I had known her, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't calculation. It was shame, real deep, unflattering shame. I understand, she said. I do. I nodded. She left. I have since learned, from Marcus later, over many difficult conversations, that Renata went home that day and told him she thought they needed couples therapy. That what had happened had shown her something about herself that she didn't recognize and didn't want to be. Whether that growth is real and lasting, I cannot say. I am not her judge. I am just her father-in-law. An old man who fell down some stairs. I began cancer treatment 6 weeks after the fall. Chemotherapy. It was, I will not pretend otherwise, brutal. There are weeks I would rather not remember. Weeks of nausea and exhaustion and a bone-deep tiredness that I had never encountered before in my life. But I did not go through it alone. Lily moved me to Tennessee. She came with her husband David, and they arranged everything. They didn't ask me what I wanted to do. Lily simply said, "Daddy, you're coming home with us." End of discussion. And she said it with such warmth and such certainty that the argument I had been preparing died completely in my chest. I live now in a small apartment attached to Lily's house. My own front door, my own kitchen, my own small porch where I sit in the evenings and watch Lily's children, my grandchildren, 8 and 10 years old, run through the yard. Lily's husband David built me a raised garden bed so I could grow tomatoes without bending too far. Every Sunday we eat dinner together. Every Sunday without exception. Marcus and I speak on the phone once a week. It is still careful, still tender, the way two people speak when they are rebuilding something that was damaged. There are things between us that may never be fully repaired, but there are things that are slowly becoming new. He came to visit in the spring. He stood in my little apartment and he looked at the photographs I had hung on the walls, pictures of Dorothy, pictures of the children when they were small, pictures of my parents, and he stood with his back to me for a moment, and I could see his shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, not for the first time. But this time it sounded different. This time it sounded like he had finally, fully understood not just what he had done, but what it had cost. I know you are, I said. Come sit down. I'll make us some coffee. I want to tell you something about what it feels like to lie on a cold basement floor and think about your life. It feels clarifying. All the things I had been angry about, the small cruelties, the dismissals, the feeling of being made to take up less and less space, all of that dropped away. And what was left was simple and clear. I was glad I had loved Dorothy fully. I was glad I had taken care of her. I was glad I had raised Lily to be the woman she is. I was glad I had kept my integrity in hard moments. I was glad I had not become bitter, even when I had every right to. I was sad about Marcus. I am still sad about Marcus, but it is a sadder and wiser sadness, not a bitter one. The tumor, I am happy to tell you, responded to treatment. 14 months after my fall, Dr. Chen reviewed my latest scans and told me that the mass had reduced significantly. The prognosis is cautiously optimistic. I am not out of the woods entirely, but I am walking through them with better light. I think about the strange mathematics of that night sometimes. My son pushed me down the stairs. His wife told him to leave me there. And the consequences of that cruelty, the ambulance, the hospital, the scans they ran on my broken body, revealed a cancer that might otherwise have gone undetected until it was too late. Something terrible became something that saved my life. I am not grateful for the fall. I am not grateful for the cruelty. But I am grateful to be alive. And I am grateful that I had 1 bar of signal and enough strength to dial my daughter's number. I want to talk to you directly for a moment, not as a character, not as Harold Whitfield, 71, year old retired electrician from Georgia, just as one human being to another. There will come a day, perhaps not today, perhaps not soon, when the people who loved you the most will need something from you. Maybe it will be a small thing. Maybe it will be a large, inconvenient, uncomfortable thing that disrupts your plans and challenges your patience. And in that moment you will have a choice. The choice Marcus made, or the choice Lily made. Marcus is not a monster. I want to be very clear about that. He is a man who allowed the wrong voice to become the loudest voice in his house, and who made small compromises so gradually that he didn't notice how far he had traveled from himself. That is a very human thing, a very easy thing to do. We are all capable of it, but there are no small cruelties. That is what I learned on that cold floor. Every dismissal, every eye roll, every sigh of impatience, every herald, "Do you mind?" These things accumulate. They stack up in the heart of the person receiving them. They tell that person, quietly, persistently, day after day, you are not worth anything here. You are a burden. You are a problem. And when you spend enough time telling someone that, you become the kind of person who can leave them bleeding at the bottom of the stairs and turn up the television. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens one small choice at a time. Respect your parents, not because they're perfect, they aren't. Not because they haven't made mistakes, they have. But because love and sacrifice deserve to be honored. Because the people who stayed up with you when you were sick, who worked long hours so you could have opportunities they never had, who gave up their dreams so yours could grow, those people deserve a seat at the table. They deserve a place at the table of the family they built. Take care of your elders while they are here. Not when it's convenient, not when it doesn't cost you anything, while they are here. Because the day will come when you reach for the phone to call them, and there will be no one on the other end. And you will give everything you have just to hear their voice say your name one more time. I am sitting on my porch in Tennessee as I finish this story. The sun is going down behind the trees and somewhere in the yard. I can hear my grandchildren arguing about something unimportant. In a few minutes, Lily will call me in for dinner. I am alive. I am loved. I am home. My name is Harold James Whitfield. I am 71 years old. I fell down 14 stairs and lay alone in the dark, and I called my daughter with 1 bar of signal and 1 good hand. And it was enough. It was just enough. Remember that. When things are at their worst, when you are broken and alone, and the people you trusted have walked away, sometimes 1 call to the right person is all it takes to change everything. Choose the people who would answer on the 2nd ring, and be the person who would answer on the 2nd ring. That is the whole lesson. That is all of it. If this story moved you, if it made you want to call someone you love right now, please do it. Put down the phone after this video and make that call. And if you want more stories like this one, stories about real life, real love, and the lessons that come from both, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support means more than you know. God bless you all. I'll see you in the next one.